Hi everybody, here I am again. It's been a while, and also I thought I shouldn't just upload everything I make in one after the other. So people who are subscribed to my channel get 5 notifications one after the other. Maybe that's annoying. I don't know. Anyway, I have been working on a couple of subjects that I really wanted to make videos about, like the meditation series and a couple of others like that. And of course, once they're made, I want to upload them as quickly as I can, right? However, maybe in the future, it would be possible for me to, be a bit more patient about things and to, upload them one a day or something like that. Maybe as I get more self-assured doing this, I, will be able to do that. Anyway, I have been, I suppose you could say I've been a bit off color for a couple of days. Nothing very serious. The weather's turning definitely outside. It's quite windy and cloudy also. So we're back into long sleeves and, well, it's also that time of the month, etc., etc. So there's a couple of things that I want to go into sort of philosophical subjects or things to think about. Or things to try out, techniques and practices and all the rest of it. I also would like to show you this that I made. It's you can wear it around your neck, although it's a bit hefty. Although I tend to do that and just stick it down the front of me, in here, in between. And I'd like to show you what this is like a happiness bag for me. So that's the first thing that I'd like to show you at the moment, because it contains a couple of nice ingredients or constituents. No, that's not the right word. Anyway, bottle, which I will get back to soon enough, and another bottle. And I have two tiny little bottles. One here, I don't think you can read that. It says Cistus Absolute right there. Maybe you can read that. And this one contains thyme oil, essential oil of the thyme plant. Just a tiny bit, but it's quite enough. But the fragrance is intense, you guys. Super stuff. And one more thing is in the bag, and it's me trusty Septarian stone, the one of the two. This is the other one, right? So all 5 of these are in here, and let me show you these in more detail now. This is witch's powder. It's something that I made basically from instructions that I found on YouTube, and it is rather easy to make, provided you have, where's my drawing, a mortar. A mortar specially reserved for these type of things that you do not use for food, okay? This witch's powder is an ancient recipe. I think it's also used in the United States in voodoo type practices as a protection agent, okay? And it is really not so difficult to make. I made my own because I didn't have all the ingredients specified, so I had to sort of work from what I had. But basically it is a brick. So I used bricks that I found on the beach because they're nice and clean, okay? Pebbles that were polished by the sea that were originally brick. So red clay material that has been fired. That's one ingredient. And then sea salt, natural charcoal. So I used charcoal from my fireplace for that. As well as a bit of black pepper went in. And I also used a couple of resins, like Palo Santo resin, I think went in as well. And some herbs like sage and mugwort, both of those. Anyway, I could put up the complete recipe if you like, but you can just look up on the tube witch's powder and you will find plenty, plenty ways of making this stuff. And you just grind the whole thing together. It takes a bit of time, but breaking up the brick pieces isn't really a lot of work if you have a sturdy mortar. And I feel this is really wonderful to hold in my hand, especially this is the pure witch's powder. Let me take some out so I can show you. So it has this is what it looks like, see? Just a bit of cinnamon type dark color. Doesn't really have any smell. And there's a couple of bits and branches and little sticks in there from the sage and the other plants that I used that I haven't ground up completely. And I suppose you can see a bit of a salt crystal here and there. It looks like over the years I've become more and more sensitive to products, and because I work with crystals a lot, I work with essential oils a lot, I've found that everything has a vibration, right? Everything has and we know that type of thing. So yeah, the other bottle, actually it is a beeswax mixture that I made using this as well as, let me see what's in here, Palo Santo oil in a couple of combinations, as well as rose attar. Rose attar means a rose oil based in sandalwood oil. And they tend to be rather expensive, but that's great stuff to work with. It's really soft and it keeps forever, and yeah. So the actual vibration of this one is different. I couldn't really explain how from this one, but because it's, to me now it's that time of the month, I find this absolutely bliss to hold in my hand. It's like a tiny heater or something, because I'm a bit low on energy. My vitality is all, gone to work on the whatever is happening down there. And I can really use something like this. And whereas these stones, the Septarian stones, if I hold this right now, it's very much more, it gives me more of a sense of being awake, being disciplined, being aware of what it is I'm doing, and so on and so forth. So it's more demanding, right? It's also warming in a way, more than the rock crystal, which is a purifying type agent that I'm wearing now, because it's also a very friendly stone, this one in particular. So there's a lot of differences. There's a difference between these two even, you know what I mean. It's like every, of course, obviously, the composition of these two is rather different. This one has a lot more of the yellow calcite, and this one has a lot less of it. So that'll have an effect. And so, yeah, with these two as well, I'm just going to hang on to these two for a bit more. It brings to mind for me a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I want to go into grounding as a technique or practice from a viewpoint of what that can do for you and how hard or not hard it is, and so on and so forth. So maybe we'll do that now, because this type of, the witch's powder with the brick and the charcoal and a couple of other, it tends to be rather more a fire element type of work that you do with this. And to me, I've been doing a lot of astrology lately, as you know, because you were there most of the time. If I look at my own horoscope, there's a lot of fire elements in there as well. Most of my planets are either in fire or in water signs. So to me, being grounded is not easy. And I know there's very many people for whom feeling grounded is, I think we all sort of mean the same thing when we're talking about this, but I would like to, sort of establish, at least for myself anyway, and maybe it'll help somebody, out there to think about this. And basically, also what I think is really important is that we don't talk about consciousness itself. And that's the relationship, or maybe I should say the difference in approach when you use the word consciousness, or when you talk about mind, or about feeling, or about personality and identity. All those things are supposed to be different, but we don't really know what it is that we are going, what we want from these things and what we are working with. And we find that very difficult often to look at ourselves, look at the way you can look at the way you think to a certain extent, and that's about it. Or you can look at the way you feel. After a while, you, especially if you need it, of course, then you're motivated. And after a while, you figure out, oh, if I feel like this, then I've been doing that, and so on. But we don't really know all that much about consciousness. And I think that not only is consciousness something we take for granted and we sort of assume that everybody, you and me, and everybody on the planet has the same single intentional spark or little pebble or kernel of inner awareness, right there. And that's who you are, and that's who you're looking from towards the world, and so on and so forth. And that is your consciousness. And I think that's not the complete picture. There is a part that looks like that, but it isn't complete. I think that it may well be about 15 years ago or thereabouts, maybe even 20, that I suddenly felt like I'm going to pour myself a cup of tea because I will need this, Bear with for a second. There is me tea because I made a big pot of Chinese green tea. So I'm going to drink it because that's just what the doctor ordered, right? Where was I? 20 years ago. I just thought all of a sudden I felt inside myself that I have an active consciousness part and a passive, much larger consciousness part. And they're both me. So this was way before all the soul retrieval thing and all the, the interesting bits that have happened afterwards, right? And I don't know why I was thinking about this. It was just something that just kind of came to me. And it came to me also in a kind of a visualization, like the two French cartoon characters, Asterix and Obelix. It's like that. And to a certain extent, it still feels like that. It's like those two parts of my program are doing the work all the time. Only if I take into consideration everything that has happened to me in the past 5 years or so, with soul retrieval and healing and meditation and all that, I think that Obelix, the big one and the relatively quiet one, has grown even bigger, if possible. And Asterix who is the little active, sort of independent, moving, choosing character in the story, is really, he's become much more he. I'm talking about myself here. She, whoever that is, has become a lot happier and empowered and more cheerful and so on and so forth, from the fact that Obelix in the background is expanding and is better grounded, among other things. So I'm trying to talk about all these things at the same time, which doesn't make sense and doesn't work, of course, but I tend to listen to myself again afterwards And somehow I still manage to tie in a couple of subjects back to each other so that it doesn't come out like a completely sucked out of my thumb, uit mijn duim gezogen. That's Dutch for I invented it all, I just made it up. I'm not making this up. There used to be an Asterix and an Obelix, and I don't really think of myself that way anymore, but I think it's interesting to distinguish consciousness, that there may very well be two parts, an active, almost not independent, but kind of autonomous in movement, part of our consciousness that investigates. That's the part of you that is listening to me talk here. That part is involved with this, but not all of your person is involved listening to me or listening to the weather on the radio. Why should it? But it's all there in case you need it. And I think that's one kind of interesting approach for looking at consciousness. The way it's a very big device, really. And I suppose that with all the memories that have come back to me in recent times from, being in the foster home and before that, my parents and all, things that I didn't used to remember, but they were there all the time. Otherwise, how could I still know it now that I'm, 40 plus years on in history, How would it be possible for me to be triggered? Yes, I use that word. If I weren't still, hoarding that information somewhere inside me, all this information is stored. And I'm not just talking about memory, because memory is also very much a conscious thing. So I am sort of pleading here, I suppose you could say, for a multi-layer approach to consciousness. I think it's important that we realize that consciousness and identity, that they are not single things, and it's not like an atom that you cannot theoretically divide up into parts or functions or any of it. And I don't think that one part of consciousness can do the work of another part of consciousness. It's all organized, it's all structured. However, whenever there's trauma and pain, and especially deep pain from the past, then part of our consciousness will have sort of fossilized around that, around the memories and around the emotions, basically. Not around the memories, around the emotions. And it will be very hard for you to use that part of your consciousness. That's a big problem with trauma, right? Is that a part of us has become immobilized, and it will have to be dealt with sooner or later. And so that can be quite hard, and especially if we postpone it, which is of course what we do, and nobody gives us time, nobody allows us to just sit there and do the work that we need. So it's very rare for us to be able to do that. So this is a couple of things that I really wanted to say today. And I also think that it ties in with the whole grounding thing insofar as that for me, feeling grounded. Yes, Puss, I know you're there. He's starting. It's past 4 o'clock, so I'm supposed to feed him. Preferably every 10 minutes, because he'll just keep on at it, Where was I? Now I've completely lost my point. Grounding. Yes, it's becoming easier for me to feel grounded. And I have seen also that being grounded for me means coming into contact with the energy out of the earth that is below me, that is feeding me, that is supplying me with energy the whole time. So in a sense, mentally, even intellectually, if I connect, if I focus part of my consciousness on the field inside the earth beneath me, that'll alone, just doing that will feel comforting, because it is myself reconnecting with a path of energy that I have traveled before. My energy has traveled that path before it came into my body, right? So it feels very familiar. It feels like something I can make contact with relatively easily if I focus. And there we go again. That's Asterix's problem, okay, is focus. And whenever we are constantly engaged in the world outside and we don't take time to step back, or even we fear doing that and being alone, being by ourselves and just sitting there and whatever, because something might come up that scares us, or I don't know, difficulties may arise. But most of the time, you and me in the world, I think we're safe. Most of us, most of the time. And those are the people you don't really hear, okay? Because it's the drama and the things that the way things shouldn't be. That's what you get to hear on the news, and it's scary and all that. And I have personally been through so much upheaval and so much. Not all of it was trauma, but a great deal of my life was just messed up from A to Z. And then grounding wasn't something I could do. I tried. I have tried for years, and all I could really achieve was a sort of a mental focus, an intellectual focus, because that's part of me, the part of me that worked. And it's only recently now that I have emotionally sort of managed to come into contact with the parts of myself, again, that were hidden. And I find that because they come out, because it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to be vulnerable, and to react in ways that were just the ways I was brought up with, Everybody I knew was abandoned and afraid and angry most of the time. So how could I have learned anything else? I think that's pretty important right there. And getting all that into it's like the whole thing comes together more and more. It's not only philosophy, it's not only a meditation practice, it's not only the psychology and the completion process and all that, and it's not only the creative work, it's all of it put together that sort of finally allows me to be by myself, to sit on my square yard of ground surface and be at ease, be comfortable by myself. And funnily enough, that's when I started putting up videos, because now I want to talk about this. And so that's all what I will be getting back to. I'm still a bit tired, and it's getting a bit darker, and you'll probably be able to see that. It's let me see, it is 10 to 5 in the afternoon here, and the light is fading already. And we're at the end of October. And, oh yeah, final point, tomorrow is the famous full moon conjunct Uranus. And oh my God, I'll be so glad when all that is over and we've survived, which we always do, right? Let's just knock on wood. Because that's one hell of a full moon. And it's conjuncting everything, and it's, I've been talking to you about that. It's been very complicated, and still I think that being on the tube and telling you whatever it is that I have to say at that moment, and listening to what you have to say, is actually becoming more and more important to me, with some management and some caution, because I cannot be on the tube 24/7, and neither can you, even though we try very hard. So I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, and I will be seeing you again very shortly. Thank you very much. Bye bye for now.